All right, Dave, wanted to ask you some questions about your thoughts on UFC 249. Now, obviously, this is your job, so you're covering it because it is your job. But as a fan, do you have mixed feelings about sort of you being interested in watching the show and probably being excited because we haven't really had anything to watch that really counted?
Okay, so when I look at the lineup, I will tell you that I am not as excited as I feel I should be, and that's probably because of mixed feelings about doing the show. And really mixed feelings, I have to say that the behavior of Dana in particular has really soured me on UFC in a lot of ways, like in a real big way, to where it's almost like, you have a guy who's like so cold and callous to the real world and so completely clueless. And I don't, and he's so, he's such a giant figure in the industry that it almost paints this entire industry bad, even though the fighters themselves and everything like that and the workers at UFC and all that, they're normal people and they're cool. So, again, like, this is a really good card. But it's like I'm sour on UFC right now. So there's that negativity. What the presentation will be like and the entertainment value of the show is to be seen. We'll find out. It's going to be a learning experience. I've seen a lot of empty arena stuff from, whether it's Japan, Mexico, and certainly the United States. And it does, and wrestling is different from MMA, but it's hard. I watched Pentagon and El Hijo del Vikingo, and it was like super, but it still didn't do it for me. It's like I'm like jonesing for like, you know what I mean? Like the stuff that we were taking for granted, you know what I mean? Like, oh, Will Ospreay's got a match on Friday, like every Friday, right? It's like, God, I haven't seen a match like that in whatever it is, 2 months now. So it's tough. As far as the fights go, we got to wait and see. If this card isn't good, I think it's going to be really tough for a card to be good because this card is so loaded. There's matches on paper that I'm very interested in. Now the next Wednesday and the Saturday after, that's different. I'm not that into those cards at all. So, and the idea of running so many UFCs, I think, can burn people out too. I think Saturday is going to be a pretty big success, though. I think the TV rating will be real high, and I think that I don't know how the pay-per-view will do because there's all kinds of factors. I think a lot of the pay-per-view actually will depend on how entertaining the ESPN stuff is, because I can see if ESPN is like through the roof, people will kind of go, oh, this is a great card, and the pay-per-view looks even better. But if it's like this dead atmosphere, it's going to be like, I'm not going to spend $60 for 5 more fights like this. So I think that the pay-per-view is very dependent on how the presentation looks, because it's not John Jones and it's not Conor McGregor where there's anything where it's can't miss. Even though, Ferguson and Gaethje is could be like fight of the year. The lure of fight of the year, business-wise, is never as big as the lure of big personalities, and Ferguson's not. He should be a big personality. He is to some people, but he's not to the mainstream. And Gaethje, quite frankly, should be because he's always exciting, but he's still not to the mainstream. Cruz and Cejudo. Part of the issue too is I haven't seen a lot of build-up to these fights. I've seen some. Maybe I've been concentrating too much on wrestling, but I haven't seen and I guess tomorrow's press conference, so maybe we'll start seeing some stuff there. And Cruz is really good at building fights, and I don't know. And with UFC, it really is the last 2-3 days that really determine everything. Anyway, it's not so the jury's sort of out on everything. So I'm a little bit looking forward to it, but not as much as I don't have the feeling right now that I do before like a normal huge UFC.
Yeah, the show is definitely stacked for action, but more along the lines of, a fight fans kind of card rather than this draw that is going to grab the non-fight fans or the casuals. Now, if this show doesn't do strong business, do you think that they're going to try and get some of their heavy hitters? Like, I just can't imagine seeing John Jones or Conor McGregor fight in front of zero fans.
Yeah, I know. Well, Dana was talking about that they're talking to Conor, and he was even going like, that Conor's probably going to fight on Fight Island. And it was sort of like, can you imagine doing this, with Conor? He's like, we can do a $20 million gate, which is exaggerated, but they can do a $10 million gate with Conor, and they're going to do it with a zero gate. But he was talking like that. It's a really weird thing. Put it this way, and again, I guess with, and again, wrestling and MMA are very different when it comes to the draw for a lot of reasons. But the one thing I've learned so far from the wrestling is that you're going to get 2 or 3 weeks where the numbers are real good, and it kind of like lulls you into the idea that, hey, it's okay, and then it just nosedives. And now we're in the period with WWE, like now it's like nosediving at a level that, like, in my worst case model, I couldn't imagine it being where it is now, and knowing that we're not nearly at the bottom, that we're going to be, that's the thing. It's like, like last week it was kind of like, okay, are we bottoming out? And then both shows just, did like 7-8% drops in a week, not in a month, not in a year, in a week. And it's like, oh my God, we're in a, and I can see why. It's not an entertaining show, and wrestling is all about entertainment. But like with UFC, like, we may have like the first 3 shows that, that are on may do well on ESPN. And everyone may go like, oh, everything's back, everything's fine. And then in 2 months, we may find out that, we're in, it's in the same boat as WWE. Probably not, just because there's probably things that, again, winning and losing matters more. There's actual stakes, and WWE's really shitty at stakes. And I think that, like, in this time period, you need stakes real bad. Because if you don't have people caring, there's just too many things that they're going to think about doing, whether it's watch the news or whatever, or if you're not entertaining, they'll watch a movie, rather than watch dead wrestling. But I think the same thing goes with fights without, like, maybe if you have a show that's a normal show, without championship matches or anything like that, and it's just your normal, that weekly show that you can hit or miss, I could see if the entertainment value of these shows isn't good, that those shows may nosedive, when we go down like 5 weeks down the line too.
Yeah, and I think with the wrestling, what we've seen is, because I remember when I was talking to friends who did not want the wrestling to go away because they needed some sort of normalcy, and to them the wrestling was going to help them, kind of deal with a situation that is really tough, but you have your out of habit wrestling, and it makes things better for a little bit. But it looks like you said, it looks like that works for a couple of weeks, but then even those people start to fall off. And I wonder, some of it obviously has to do with the fact that the product is not great in this environment, but I wonder if also just being the same old isn't good enough right now, because it doesn't help as much as we thought it might help with bringing people out of the reality of the situation. And I wonder with the UFC, like you said, I think we have they even have a show on the 23rd, so you have so many shows back to back to back. Not that they're going to burn it out, but I do wonder if somehow
we're going to have a show every Saturday night probably from now for a long, long time. Yeah.
Do you think they'll do more stuff during the week to catch up as well?
A little bit, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what they know, because, like, we're, normally now, we would know dates 2 months in advance, and we only know through, we know through May 23rd. We don't know anything from May 30th. We do know there'll be a June 6th, and that's all we know. We don't know anything after that. So, without having to promote a live event, they're not even incumbent. It's almost like WWE with again, with a comparison. WWE's got this Money in the Bank show, which has been, to me, so poorly promoted. I have no interest in anything on that show. And I think part of it is because, you know, that it's almost like, well, we know it's like we're not going to get a whole bunch of new people buying the network this month. And we know that it's not going to do well. So it's almost sort of like this thing of we're doing it because we're doing it, but all of the heart is gone.
But I mean, they don't have to do it.
Yeah, but you know, Vince won't change. You know what I mean? You know, Vince. The world's not going to affect Vince, but they've done a really bad job of adapting. Horrible job of adapting. I mean, what you just said, I can say, and I wouldn't say this for every week, but I will absolutely say it for last week, is that 2-hour AEW show last week, to me, was it was just 2 hours of fun. And I don't know that you know, I'm almost sad. I'm not even almost sad. I am sad because I think they really hit into something with Jericho, where he's just throwing this stuff out, and you never know what he's going to say because he doesn't even know what he's going to say. And now we're going to be back to JR, and JR is like a double whammy in the sense of you know, Jericho's not going to be announcing, and with JR there, I'm going to be sitting there like I was with Lawler, just going like, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm. So back to the UFC. Obviously, we're in this like new reality. Do you have any sense of the fighters and how if they were sequestered, or do you think that the fight camps were just sort of happening as normal? Because if not, like if they were really, you know, doing the social distancing and stuff, I would be worried about the weight cuts because, you know, they're not able to do it in the way that they were. But if it's sort of, you know, at the fight camps it's business as usual, then you know, maybe not. But do you have any sense of how that's been going with some of these guys?
Well, it's different for all of them, but I think they're all compromised. I mean, in every case, because even if they're trying to work hard, the situation is completely different. They won't have their normal training partners. Many of them won't even have their gym. A lot of them may have their gym to train at, but they don't have the partners, and they have probably limited coaches. You know, I think the big thing with this show is that the guys who are able to come the closest to what they normally do are going to have a huge advantage on the guys who don't. And there's different, like, little things, you know, like Gaethje has been training really, really hard, but not for a long period of time, but he's been training really, really hard. So that may help. Other guys, like Michelle Waterson, who's fighting Carla Esparza, I mean, her training has been rolling around with her husband. You know what I mean? I mean, her gym's closed, and that's, you know, she's against a real opponent, and you know, that's going to be a big difference maker. Cerrone, I don't know who he's been training with and not training with, but you know, Cerrone doesn't want to fly. So Cerrone's driving from Albuquerque. He's arriving in Jacksonville on Friday morning for weigh-ins. That, you know, plus the weight cut, and he's fighting 155, not 170, I believe. So for him, you know, the 170 is an easy cut. 155 is a really hard cut. And, you know, and he's 37 years old, you know, and he's looked really old in his last couple fights. And it's like, that doesn't feel like a great recipe for a good performance at all.
What do you think about the, I guess I'll say the thing that worries me a little bit is the folks who are not as in great of shape and possibly don't have the gas tank that they normally would, you know, from a safety perspective. I think that is that could be a little scary, and I do wonder if some of these fighters just kind of try and you know, go for that early knockout because they know that health wise that they're not going to be there like they usually are, and I do wonder how that makes the just the overall action for the show. If you feel that you are at your peak game, maybe you don't need to take as many chances as you would if you don't feel like you're at your peak. So I wonder how that's gonna be for just the action of the fights. If there's gonna be more action, if there's gonna be less action, like I really don't know. And I'm trying to sort of in trying to predict some of the fights. Like I'm trying to think like, okay, who might be, maybe not up to training and up to snuff in training, and who might be more so. Like I do wonder about that when it comes to trying to pick these fights.
Yeah, because I think that's a giant factor in most of the fights is who's trained the closest to optimum and who's not. And also, like what you said, like there's two things. If you go in there and you know you're not your best, okay, there's two ways of going in there. You just go in there and you just go all out for a round and just go, I've got a round or a round and a half, and I just got to get it finished. And then you're really excited. Or, more likely, you go in there and you just go, I got to stall for a round and a half. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or I gotta go real slow because I know that if this thing goes into the third round, I'm and I go out fast, I'm dead. And in that case, you get a bad fight. So I don't know what the mentality will be, and everyone's different. So I do find that there's going to be way more variables from normal than any other show before. So and then also just the stir craziness aspect of it. You're going to be fighting with no fans. You're going to be fighting with no family in the audience. All that kind of stuff that motivates you. You know what I mean? All your friends at ringside and all that. I mean, it's different. I mean, when you're a fighter and the fight starts, I think you're going to be kind of like, I'm in a fight. I don't even know that that's going to affect you too much, but the week leading in, I mean, all of the, I think a lot of people get off on all of the fun activities as far as being in the UFC, and those activities of fight week, I mean, they're pretty much all gone. You know what I mean? You're not being a celebrity in the lobby of the hotel, and you're not doing all the stuff that is all the fun stuff that you do in fight week. None of that's going to be there. You're going to be sitting in your room and cutting weight and nothing else. You're not going to be going to, whatever. I mean, I know usually you don't go to restaurants till after, but you're not going to go to the big party restaurant after or the big post-match party, or you know what I mean? So many of the things that you kind of take for granted that you would look forward to as a UFC fighter, that kind of gets you going, like this is super exciting. It's going to be kind of boring. So that's another factor.
And the thing, and this is something I don't know too much about, but cutting weight and trying to get to a specific weight on weigh-in day, sometimes you see a lot of the fighters kind of, they look ill, they don't look healthy, and when you're trying to be conservative in a situation like this, if you're the UFC, how do you even judge whether someone is able to fight or not, and just knowing the circumstances?
Yeah, I know. And the other one, because the thing is like when you're cutting weight, you very often are going to get a little bit of a cold or a minor flu that you just kind of fight through. And now, if you have that, won't the doctors, out of caution, just have to pull you?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was wondering was how many of these fights actually don't happen because of that situation.
Yeah, we don't know, because there's always the situations where the fight ends up getting pulled at the last minute, but even afterwards, where a fight doesn't get pulled, and you kind of hear, oh yeah, like I was this and that, and these like I was sick, I was the flu, I'd run down, I had a minor infection, these things that you just kind of go through. And, yeah, I mean, in theory, you should be flagged. But, and that's this is one of the worrisome things to me, because there's so much stuff that these commissions, kind of look the other way on. Just the things like, like when Bisping got knocked out, fought GSP and then came back and fought Kelvin Gastelum 3 weeks later, which was just, I mean, it was the worst. All the different ones where you know that like a guy shouldn't be fighting this soon after being rocked, but they look the other way. And so if we have that kind of lax stuff, I mean, I don't know. if they just kind of go, oh, we got to have the fight. There's so many factors that are going to go in. One thing that I would have done, I knew it wouldn't be done, but I would have done, is that I would have decreed that everyone fighting right now, every single person is moving up one weight class.
That's what I was just going to ask you about.
I would have, if I was Dana, I would have made that ruling, a month ago and just said, like, okay, as long as this thing's going on, everyone is moving up 15 pounds. So at least, you're not going to have that severe weight cut, and it eliminates at least that one reason you would get sick at the end. And also the other thing is that it helps for your stamina, because you're not doing that big cut and then coming back the next day and fighting. This way, okay, maybe you're not in as good a shape overall from your training, but you're taking out that thing that depletes you with that giant weight cut the day before. So that, that's a positive. So that's why I would have done that. I knew they wouldn't, because it's like, I don't know. I mean, to me, it was like an obvious move, but they don't, they've turned a blind eye to weight cutting for 20 years that, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like they're just always going to.
Yeah. So other than the main event, which, even in this situation, I can't imagine that is not a really exciting fight. What's the other one or two fights that you think, even in this new reality, that you're expecting to be really good? Cruz and
Cejudo, because of the personalities and the skill level. I mean, just seeing Cruz fight for the first time in 4 years, I'm very excited about that fight. Ngannou and Rosenstruck, I mean, it's got that big heavyweight thing, where you can't take your eyes off it, because probably somebody's getting knocked out in a big manner really quick, or maybe it'll be a really boring fight, but probably it's going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty exciting. So that one's a good one. Vicente Luque and Nico Price is a really good action fight. Was it Jeremy Stevens, Calvin Guitar is a good. Pettis and Cerrone on paper looks great, but I just, Cerrone just looked so bad in the McGregor fight that he's going to have to prove something. And Pettis is hit and miss too in the last couple of years. But on paper, you would look at those guys, and Pettis does have a lot of good fights on his resume, and Cerrone has as many great fights as almost anyone in the history of the sport on his resume. So, on paper, you still look at that, and they're both big personalities, and it's a fight I'm looking forward to, and hoping that Cerrone doesn't look like he did in his last fight.